Have you ever met someone and immediately, deep inside, you felt a wave of discomfort, irritation, or even an unexplainable sense of disdain? On the other hand, there are also moments when you meet a person and feel instantly drawn to them, almost overwhelmed, as if they possess something you could never have. Carl Jung believed these strong reactions were not random at all. They are secret doors, leading straight to the true nature of the human being. We live in a world where everyone wears a mask, roles created to be accepted by society, to protect ourselves from harm, or to keep an image intact. But Jung discovered this. If you want to see through the mask, do not just listen to words or watch daily actions. There are two rare moments when the unconscious steps forward and the truth breaks through. The first is when a person projects their shadow onto others. The second is when the mask, the persona, cracks under pressure. In this video, we will journey into these two moments, not only to recognize the essence of others, but more importantly, to shine a light on ourselves. Because what you hate, what you admire, or what you cannot stand in another person often reflects a part of your own soul, the part that has been denied. Come with me and let us explore this path. For if you truly understand the psychological mechanisms that Jung revealed, you will not only read others more deeply, you will also take the first steps onto a difficult yet liberating road, the road of facing and integrating your true self. Carl Jung once said, "What you see in others is never only about them. It always says something about you." To understand this statement, we must begin with an important concept: the persona, the mask we wear every single day. The persona is the image we want the world to see: the dutiful child, the dedicated colleague, the pleasant friend, or the strong, unshakable leader. It is the outer shell that society praises and rewards, but at the same time, it hides away the parts we do not wish to show. The problem is this: the more perfect the mask, the greater the distance from the true self. And within that distance, the truth begins to leak out. Jung discovered that to see a person's true nature, you do not need to hear them talk about themselves, nor observe their usual behavior, because most of that is under control. Instead, watch when the unconscious takes over. There are two key situations. The first, when someone projects their darkest parts onto others, often when they judge harshly or idolize excessively. The second, when the image they try to maintain is challenged or shaken. That is when the mask cracks and the inner self shows through. Why is this important? Because it gives you a key not only to see through others, but also to face yourself. For when we see clearly how others project or react, we also realize that we are doing the very same thing. And that is the first step of individuation, the process of becoming whole, of truly becoming yourself. In the next part, we will explore in detail how the shadow is projected outward and why it is the deepest mirror reflecting the true essence of a human being. Carl Jung realized that human beings never live entirely in the light. Alongside the conscious personality we show to the world, there always exists a shadow. The shadow is not only a collection of dark traits such as selfishness, greed, or aggression. It also includes hidden potentials, creative powers, and desires we do not dare to admit. And when left unconscious, this shadow is often thrown outward, projected onto others. This is the mechanism of projection. Jung observed this phenomenon again and again in therapy. One case was a middle-aged woman who constantly complained that her friends were too selfish, always thinking only of themselves. She saw herself as devoted, self-sacrificing, always putting others first. But through analysis, Jung noticed a deep inner tension. She too longed to live for herself, to say no when tired, to attend to her own needs. Because she could not admit it, she pushed that longing into the dark. And then she saw it everywhere in those around her. The anger she felt was in fact the voice of her own shadow. Jung also noted projection in the relationship between teacher and student. He saw many patients view the analyst as the embodiment of absolute wisdom, or on the contrary, as a tyrant trying to control them. In truth, these were projections of the parts of their psyche they had not yet faced, the need for guidance or the resistance to authority. Jung called this transference, the transfer of emotions and inner shadow onto an external figure. Projection does not stop at the personal level. Jung saw its power on the collective scale. He analyzed the political atmosphere of Europe in the first half of the 20th century, when millions placed upon their leaders the image of a savior. According to Jung, this was collective projection, longings for power, strength, and order, elements repressed within each individual. He warned, when a nation fails to recognize its own shadow, it will hand it over to another person. And this, he said, could lead to tragedy. History later proved him right. Jung emphasized that the sign of projection is the intensity of emotion. If someone makes us react too strongly, whether with fierce hatred or blind admiration, then most likely we are seeing in them a part of ourselves, a part rejected by the conscious mind, but one that the unconscious constantly tries to bring into the light. Recognizing this mechanism does not mean we must become what we project. On the contrary, it restores balance. The woman who called her friends selfish did not need to become selfish, but she could learn to admit her own needs. Those who projected their hunger for power onto a leader did not need to become dictators, but they had to learn to take responsibility for their own strength and choices. Jung believed that whenever we notice a powerful judgment rising in our hearts, it is not a chance to condemn another. It is an invitation to face our own shadow. For only when we have the courage to look directly at the shadow and integrate it into conscious life can we truly grow in soul. In Carl Jung's psychology, the persona, or the mask, is the part of personality we construct to adapt to society. It is the role of who I want the world to see, perhaps a dutiful child, a model employee, or a strong, decisive leader. Through the persona, we gain acceptance and protection from judgment. But Jung stressed, the persona is not the whole person, it is only the outer shell. And when challenged, the shell may crack, revealing the hidden essence within. In therapy, Jung often saw this moment when patients faced situations that shook the image they tried to maintain. One striking example was a man who always saw himself as polite, calm, and wise. His speech was polished, his gestures measured. He gave the impression of perfect balance. But when Jung gently questioned the contradictions in his story, the man grew irritable, sharp in tone, at times even losing control. Jung wrote, in only a few minutes, the mask he had worked so hard to maintain collapsed, exposing a soul filled with insecurity and long-suppressed anger. Another case was a woman Jung analyzed. She appeared as a devoted mother, full of sacrifice. Yet when Jung touched upon feelings of neglect in her personal life, she became highly defensive. She denied every question. She even turned and criticized Jung. This strong reaction did not come from her conscious will. It came from the threat to her persona of the perfect mother. Behind the moral facade was a weary woman, longing to have her own needs acknowledged, a truth she could not allow herself to admit. Jung believed that these moments when the mask cracks are of special importance. They give us rare glimpses into the truth within. The harder someone clings to their perfect image, the stronger their reaction when that image is threatened. Some grow defensive, deny, or blame. Some grow angry and attack others. But in some cases, when guided with care, a patient dares to stop and to accept their own fragility. Jung saw this as a sign of psychological maturity. He warned, if a person clings too tightly to the persona, they risk losing their true self. The woman who lives forever in the role of the selfless mother may slowly collapse. The man trapped in the image of the calm gentleman will never learn to face his own anger and insecurity. Life then becomes a stage, and the true self is pushed down into the unconscious, waiting to erupt in moments beyond control. For Jung, the breaking of the persona was not a disaster. It was an opportunity. Only when the mask cracks can we see the hidden truths behind it. And if we are brave enough, that moment may open the path toward integrating the whole self, instead of living forever in roles imposed by society. Carl Jung believed that psychological growth does not come from hiding the shadow. It comes from the ability to integrate it into consciousness. One way to measure this level of growth is through what he called the integration test, a simple psychological trial that reveals much about the depth of a person's character. This test occurs when an individual is mirrored. They are invited to look back at a reaction, an emotion, or a behavior they have just displayed. Instead of judgment or accusation, the analyst offers only a gentle remark. Then they observe the response. At that very moment, the shadow in the unconscious is touched, and the way a person reacts reveals the stage they are at in their journey of psychological maturity. Jung divided these reactions into three typical groups. 1. The completely unconscious group. These are the people who cannot accept any suggestion that they hold a dark side within. When mirrored, they respond fiercely, denial, anger, or blame. They are like a mirror that only reflects outward, never allowing light to pass inward. For Jung, this is the unopened personality, still ruled entirely by defense mechanisms. 2. The aware but defensive group. At this stage, the person has some awareness of their shadow. They might admit, "I know I often react this way," but such admission remains on the surface. When deeply triggered, they fall back into old patterns. Jung noted that these individuals are midway on the path. They have begun to see the shadow but lack the courage or skill to truly integrate it. 3. The integrated group. This is the highest level. Here, a person can pause, observe their own reaction, and acknowledge uncomfortable truths without defensiveness. They can turn the mirror into data for growth. Yes, I see my anger, and it tells me something about the fear inside me. According to Jung, this is the sign of inner harmony, when the shadow is no longer denied, but embraced as part of the self. Jung emphasized that the integration test is never once and done. It is a continuous process, tested again and again across different areas of life. A person may integrate well in one field, yet remain unconscious in another. Thus, maturity is not an absolute state, but a gradual movement. By observing these responses, Jung showed that personality can be mapped by its readiness to face the shadow. It is not a sentence, but a compass. The more willing one is to step into the discomfort of self-awareness, the more capable they become of growing and living fully. In romantic relationships, projection and the cracking of the mask appear most vividly. Closeness makes room for primal emotions to surface. Jung explained that what we despise or adore in our partner is often a meeting point between spiritual need and the denied part of ourselves. A deeper analysis shows when someone constantly criticizes their partner's coldness, it may signal their own avoidance of feeling. When they glorify their partner's strength to the point of blindness, it often reflects a longing for the power they themselves have not embraced. In intimacy, the persona is easily challenged. The roles of the perfect lover or the steady partner begin to crack when the other unconsciously triggers the shadow. And in that reaction, we see each partner's capacity to integrate emotions. In the workplace, these dynamics show up in subtler forms. The persona often becomes professionalized, a personal brand, an image of competence. Jung stressed that true leadership is not only about public skill, it is about maintaining consistency between image and reaction under pressure. When the persona is threatened, for example, when an idea is challenged, defense mechanisms emerge: blaming, undermining, or avoidance. These reveal not only the maturity of the individual, but also the culture of the group. On a collective scale, Jung observed that organizations also have a collective shadow. Hidden values, unspoken fears, or suppressed desires are often projected onto leaders or competitors, and this distortion can shape strategic decisions in dangerous ways. In parenting, projection and persona form repeating cycles with lasting impact. Parents easily transmit judgments of right and wrong, rooted in unhealed fears or desires. Jung warned, when adults label a child's behavior as rebellious or selfish without recognizing the source within themselves, they unintentionally teach the child to hide or to repeat the same pattern. Deeper analysis reveals a spiral of conditioning. Unacknowledged shadows create generations unable to reflect upon themselves. In therapy or spiritual leadership, Jung highlighted transference, when patients or followers project their past onto another, as a rich source of insight. It reveals inner structures and unintegrated regions of the psyche. Careful mirroring through the integration test can spark growth, but if used to judge or manipulate, it damages the relationship and strengthens defense. Finally, Jung valued self-reflective tools like the shadow journal. By turning emotions into symbols, it allows the unconscious to be given words, transforming raw feelings into personal stories. This process of symbolization creates space for integration. In summary, applying Jung's framework across different domains requires sensitivity. It means recognizing projection, noticing when the persona is tested, and treating reactions as data, not evidence for condemnation. Only when used with subtlety, guided by the goal of deeper understanding and compassion, can the knowledge of shadow and persona truly transform relationships and nurture personal growth. Carl Jung often reminded us, when we observe the shadow of another, we are also standing before a mirror that reflects our own. A critical gaze can quickly turn into a hidden arrogance. I see your shadow, therefore I am above you. But Jung warned, this is one of the most subtle forms of shadow, the shadow of the observer. When we believe we are more conscious, we risk creating a new persona, the role of the one who understands, the role of the enlightened one. And under that mask, it becomes easy to forget that we too still carry many parts left unintegrated. Seeing the blind spots of others does not mean we have overcome our own. On the contrary, in the very act of observing, we often reveal judgment, and that reveals that our shadow is still quietly at work. Jung also issued another important warning, this time about compassion. He stressed that empathy, without self-awareness, can become collusion. Someone who forgives too easily, or who constantly covers for others, may believe they are acting out of love. But in truth, they may be led by shadow, by a fear of conflict, by a need to be seen as the good person, or by a hidden desire to control others through sacrifice. That is why Jung encouraged humility and watchfulness. When you observe someone else, look inward at your own reactions. Treat them as data, as clues about yourself. And when you feel compassion, pause. Ask yourself, is this compassion born from true love? Or is it driven by an unrecognized shadow within me? Only by holding on to this inner reflection can we avoid turning understanding into a tool for strengthening the ego. In other words, Jung's lesson is this: never forget, the observer also has a shadow. True wisdom does not lie in judgment, nor in blind forgiveness. It lies in balance, in the ability to see the shadow in others, while humbly recognizing it in ourselves. The mirror effect, according to Jung, is not just a gentle metaphor, it is a fundamental psychological mechanism. Through it, the moment we meet another person, we immediately see reflected the parts of ourselves that we have not yet faced. At its core, this effect has two parallel sides: projection, when we see flaws or weaknesses in another, and positive projection, when we place upon them qualities or powers we have not yet claimed for ourselves. Both are signs of the unconscious at work. The mechanism unfolds across several layers. At the emotional level, there is resonance. One spark in the other stirs a hidden circuit within us, producing a strong reaction. At the cognitive level, there is attribution. The unconscious assigns to the other what we have pushed out of ourselves, reducing inner conflict. At the relational level, there is transference. We transfer emotional patterns from early relationships into the present one, leading to reactions far stronger than the reality calls for. For Jung, this was precious data, not for condemning the other, but for reading the hidden structure of our own psyche. The mirror effect creates a feedback loop. Our reaction triggers theirs. Their reaction reinforces our original belief about them, and the cycle continues. Without awareness, this loop strengthens unconscious patterns. A person, or even a whole group, can become trapped in repeating scripts. Jung warned, at the collective level, this can become dangerous. The mirror effect can fuel the idolization of leaders or collective hostility toward outsiders. The result is political and social tragedy, but used with awareness, the mirror effect becomes a sharp instrument of self-knowledge. The conscious individual does not get swept away by automatic reaction. They pause. They read the emotion. They ask, is this truly about the other, or is it a message from within me? Such a person shows certain traits: the ability to observe themselves, the patience to hold discomfort without acting rashly, the gift of turning raw emotion into symbol, into words, into images, and the rare ability to hold two opposing realities together. The tension that births transformation. They treat the mirror not as proof about others, but as a suggestion, a doorway into their own depths. Yet Jung noted the price. Deeper awareness can bring isolation, for when you no longer share in the common illusions, you may feel set apart. And there is another danger: pride. Psychological insight can itself become a mask, the persona of the one who understands, concealing fresh blind spots. Thus, mirror work must be joined with humility, with inner ethics. Its goal is not domination of knowledge. Its goal is liberation, the chance for authentic connection. In the end, Jung saw the mirror effect as both risk and opportunity. Risk, when it strengthens the unconscious. Opportunity, when it becomes a tool of self-reflection. The difference lies in our stance before the mirror. Do we resist, defend, project outward, or do we endure the reflection and allow transformation? That choice, Jung said, determines whether the mirror destroys relationships or becomes the first step toward individuation. For Jung, psychological transformation was never just an abstract idea. It needed to be practiced again and again so that the shadow could gradually be integrated into consciousness. He emphasized that this process happens in ordinary moments. Each time we recognize projection, each time the persona is challenged, and each time we have the courage to look at our own reaction instead of placing the blame outside. One of the most basic practices is simply pausing before reacting. That brief moment creates distance from the unconscious cycle. Instead of responding with anger, denial, or avoidance, we observe the emotion rising within and ask, what part of me is being touched right now? This pause opens the door to transformation. Jung also valued the act of giving symbols to experience, writing a journal, drawing, or putting feelings into language. By turning the unconscious into symbols, vague energies become material that the conscious mind can engage with and process. This is not just a personal method, it is a safeguard, ensuring the individual is not overwhelmed by the shadow. When someone practices integration, the effect does not stop with themselves. Jung called this the ripple effect. Change in one individual invisibly influences those around them. A person who pauses and observes creates a safer space in relationships. They react with less violence, less judgment, and in doing so, they encourage others to reflect as well. In other words, personal growth gives birth to collective growth. Yet Jung also warned, the ripple effect is not always smooth. When one person changes, the surrounding environment may resist because it is forced to confront itself. Patience and persistence are essential to keep walking this path. In short, transformation is not only a personal journey, it is the seed of wider change. True transformation begins when each individual dares to face their own shadow, and from there creates a silent but powerful wave that spreads outward into the community. Carl Jung showed us this. Our true self is not defined by the social mask, nor by the roles we struggle to maintain. It is defined by the way we face and integrate our shadow. The shadow is not the enemy. It is a part of our being, waiting to be acknowledged and brought into wholeness. Every time we project, every time we grow angry or defensive, it is not merely weakness, it is also an opportunity, a chance to look inward. If we are brave enough, these moments can become turning points, moments that lead us toward genuine maturity. And the greatest lesson Jung left is this: change begins with you. When you dare to face your shadow, you not only free yourself, you also radiate that change into your family, your friends, and your community. If you find this message meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share this video so that more people can walk this path of understanding. Because the journey of becoming yourself is a road that no one should walk alone. Thank you for watching, and see you again in the next dimensions of exploration.